The economics of happiness. What made me happy in the last week was I was tweeting furiously about a week ago when the latest climate report came out. And I noticed, you always do, that I'd been retweeted by a Twitter handle called Women Plumbers. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. So I looked them up. And it's a network of freelance women plumbers, and they've got this brilliant name. They call themselves Stopcocks. That made me happy. That made me very happy. The other thing, just as kind of a little throwaway, when I was at the New Economics Foundation, we came up with a thing called the Happy Planet Index. And to cut a very long story short, what we discovered is that the places which were most ecologically efficient at creating well-being and human happiness were all around the world small island states. Small island states. And I think that's probably because they tend to evolve more cooperative economies. It tends to be a little bit more obvious where your environmental limits are. So if you want to, be happy, find yourself a small island state, or maybe if you're in Bristol, go live on a boat. So I'm actually going to talk about the possibility of rapid transition, because we're always told that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is a fundamental change to the current economic system. And yet the most recent climate report from the IPCC tells us that if we want to hit the target that was signed up to in Paris in 2015, we're going to need to see rapid, far-reaching and unprecedented change across the whole of society. Now, our enlightened government, to meet that challenge, has decided to go ahead with fracking. It's decided to cut subsidies to renewable and low-carbon transport. It's subsidizing fossil fuels. It's expanding aviation. And it's building a major new road in the southeast, etc., etc., etc. And yet, in the last 5 years, Arctic ice has been melting 3 times faster than it did the previous 20 years. And if you take a typical average, as far as the industry goes, fairly efficient German car, every 500 meters you drive, you're melting a kilogram of glacier ice. That's if you believe their fuel efficiency, which you shouldn't, which probably means it only takes about 290 meters to melt a kilogram of glacier ice. So the environment is changing faster than we are. How do we speed up? I think we can learn a lot from past experience, which gives us pieces of the puzzle of our capacity for change. Our challenge is going to be how we put them all together, because I think we can adapt to change much quicker than we give ourselves credit for. I give you one particular little example. In the early hours of Wednesday the 14th, 2010, a dormant volcano covered in ice with a hard-to-pronounce name. Any Icelanders in the audience? I think it is Eyjafjallajökull.
I'm not sure
I've got to
that's
get
quite
around
right,
the
but we'll go with it.
We'll test it later. Anyway, I tried. Exploded. Nobody heard it across northern Europe because the volcano was in Iceland. But the skies above our heads fell silent, and within hours, airports all across Europe were closing as if somebody had flicked a giant switch for the aviation industry. Fine dust from the cloud thrown up is lethal to modern jet engines. So for days, Europe was grounded. One of the main arteries of the modern world, cheap, ubiquitous air travel, had been switched off. But what happened next was revelatory, and a demonstration of how rapidly we can adapt to live without seemingly indispensable facets of modern life. It was a glimpse of a future in which climate change and ultimately limited oil supplies would have clipped the industry's wings. It was inconvenient, nobody was prepared, but, for example, supermarkets quickly substituted local produce for perishable, luxury, horticultural goods normally flown in. Delivery companies switched transport modes. Business people took to video conferencing. Norway's Prime Minister, Jens Stoltenberg, who was stranded at the UN building in New York, ran the Norwegian Parliament from the US from his iPad. The skies were peaceful. People found other ways to get from one place to another. They took trains, buses, taxis. Aided by social media, they shared cars, they shared rooms, they shared experiences. Spare capacity in other transport modes was taken up. Flexible communications allowed people to be virtually where they couldn't be physically. Supply and delivery chains adapted. People talked to each other. And traveling at a slower pace, they found themselves enjoying the scenery, being more aware of the world they were passing through. Now, flying was something that many thought we couldn't live without. And suddenly, when it wasn't there, the world did not come to a standstill. Transport, if you live in kind of Bristol and you've been trying to get in and out of London in the last week, it's probably been a bit of an interesting experience. It's astonishing what difficulty we seem to have to upgrade our more environmentally friendly transport systems, because in the recent modern era, it took about 15 years just to electrify 390 miles of the UK's East Coast main line. But there have been times when our engineering endeavour to rewire the country has been much bolder. If you go back to the middle of the 19th century, in just 7 years, Britain laid just under 4,500 miles of railway track. On a single weekend, on the line that runs down from London through here to the southwest, on a single weekend in 1892, by contemporary standards, engineers began a project of breathtaking ambition, which started on the morning of Saturday, May the 21st, and was finished by 4 a.m. on the following Monday morning. They had laid 177 miles of new track along the Great Western Route. Now, if you look at how quickly our fossil fuel intensive infrastructure has been put in, 47,000 miles of interstate highway in the US in 30 years. We know what we can do to do the bad stuff. If we can reverse ferret that to do the good stuff, we will be light years ahead. Similarly, other examples, the speed with which we built social housing post-war when we were more indebted are amazing. During the financial crisis in 2008, in America, in Utah, a Republican mayor in Utah put the entire public workforce, apart from the emergency services, onto a 4-day week and found out that workers were happier, their carbon emissions went down, the public was happier with the service. Look around more recently at the speed with which we're capable of rapid behaviour change, whether that's around smoking, we put a report out on this 2 weeks ago, around improved safety on our roads, around better sexual health, around the HIV/AIDS epidemic, around changing attitudes to gender, the Me Too revolution. Men-only clubs, men-only panels. You can't do that at conferences anymore. I think we have a latent capacity for rapid change that we do not give ourselves credit for. Now, partly because of that, we want to learn from history. So we're creating a thing called the Rapid Transition Alliance. It's going to launch later this year. We're taking the line from my favorite Russian medievalist, Vasily Kluchevsky. I've only got one Russian medievalist, who says history teaches us nothing, but only punishes us for not learning its lessons. So we're going to set out to learn its lessons so that it becomes easier to imagine a different economic system than the end of the world. Because first we can't imagine a situation being different, and then when things change, we can't imagine them going back to how we were before. So just to wrap up, look out for it. There's a little holding site on our friend the interweb at the moment called rapidtransition.org. You can sign up as an organisation or to follow as an individual. We'd like to hear from you. Any ideas you've got, examples of where rapid positive change has happened, we want to share that with the rest of the world. So I'll just finish with the fabulous words of Raymond Williams, great Welsh cultural critic, who said that to be truly radical is to make hope possible, rather than despair convincing. So thanks for listening.